Good morning. My name is Ira Baloi. I am a work integrated learning student at the Center of Psychological Services and Career Development, and I am also doing my final year in Public Relations and Communication field at UJ. Our guest today is a senior lecturer of the International Relations at the University of Johannesburg. She's a member of South African Association of Political Studies. Dr. Susan Graham specializes in international relations and foreign policy. Her teaching at undergraduate and postgraduate levels focus on aspects of international relations, such as the development of modern political system, foreign policy, terrorism, globalization, and international conflict. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Graham. I hope and believe that our listeners today will learn so much from you. Dr. Graham, you can introduce yourself to our listeners.
My name is Dr. Graham, and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Politics at the APK and Soweto campuses. When I say I'm a lecturer, that means I generally have 3 different things I have to do on a weekly basis. One of those is obviously lecture my students. Secondly, do research, hopefully to publish. And thirdly, be involved in some kind of academic citizenship, which means attending conferences and seminars, that kind of thing. I've been a permanent lecturer at UJ since 2008 at the Department of Politics, and ironically, I studied as a student at RAU in journalism, and politics was just an elective, but later on I moved on to BA Honours with politics and journalism as a combination, and later I finished my MA and PhD degrees in politics at UJ. So I've been a student and now an academic person at this institution since 1999, if that can give my age away a bit. And I think the most challenging thing for me as a lecturer is actually the students I teach, because they're the ones who are always passionate about the subject and who keep asking questions, and that's what keeps us on our toes. So they're the best part, the most interesting part, and the most challenging part of my job.
Can you explain to us what international studies and politics is?
When it comes to international studies and politics, what that actually means is that both disciplines encompass a great deal, and they obviously have their associated fields belonging to each discipline. But just in summary, politics deals with all issues relating to the government and the exercise of power and authority in some kind of political system. So this means the ideas, the activities, institutions through which people like you and me make, amend, and preserve the rules under which we live. That's politics. International relations or international studies is a combination. There are complex legal relationships that exist in the world today between states and non-state actors, and that's what international relations focuses on. And when I'm talking about non-state actors, I mean things like multinational corporations, transnational corporations, terrorist groups, non-governmental organizations like Amnesty International, Greenpeace, social movements, things like that.
What are the popular institutions that offer this qualification?
The institutions that offer these kinds of qualifications are generally pretty frequent in South Africa. UJ obviously offers these, but you also find WITS and our neighbouring institutions, the University of Pretoria. Even private institutions like Monash will always focus on these degrees because they're so important internationally.
What are the required subjects to study this qualification?
When it comes to required subjects that students need for our degrees at UJ, it isn't really going to be a problem. If you want to study BA Politics and International Relations, it might be good for you to have a background in Matric English and History, because you'll have some affiliation with historical facts that will help you in your subject, but it is not a prerequisite. However, if you want to study BA Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, then you will need maths, straight maths, not maths literacy, in Matric, and you'll need to get a rating, an APS score of at least 3 for maths, if you want to bear that in mind.
What are the important skills and attributes that one needs to have in order to succeed in this career path?
The necessary skills that you need, or the attributes that you should have if you want a career in politics, is it always starts out when you're a student. So in terms of personality, be motivated, persevere, have patience with yourself and your subject, always strive to do your best in an ethical way, and have an inquiring mind. Politics and IR might sound boring to other people, but it's all about research. And research is all about discovery. You can always learn more, so try and keep abreast of current affairs as best you can. And lastly, be willing to learn to start off with, because even when you've finished your degree, it doesn't mean you've finished learning. And be active citizens.
What other career opportunities one can venture into after completing international studies and politics qualification?
When it comes to career opportunities, this is the most important part that students want to hear. And this again really depends on those areas in which you feel most passionate when you are actually studying as a student. In other words, if you like writing essays, then why don't you consider working for a research institution one day or a think tank? And there are so many of those out there. I'll give you a few examples now. There's the South African Institute for Race Relations based here in Auckland Park. There's the Institute for Security Studies in Pretoria. Also the Africa Institute in Pretoria. The United Nations Information Centre in Pretoria. The South African Institute of International Affairs based at Wits. Accord, which is based near Durban, and that deals with resolution and disputes. You get the Centre for Conflict Resolution in Cape Town. Then you have web-based research organisations like Consultancy Africa. Work for the Chapter 9 institutions, for example, if you care about civil action. Work for NGOs like the Human Rights Focused Amnesty International. All of those organisations do accept interns, and many of our former students actually have jobs with those, permanent jobs with those organisations now. If you like the idea of working in academia, then become a lecturer. It worked for me. Why shouldn't it work for you? And then, of course, there's always the road you can take of working for governments, especially if you're in politics as the actual degree, because why can't you make a difference if you're part of Parliament? You can work for government as a policy advisor. You can work at the local, provincial, and national government levels in a variety of portfolios. There really is an unlimited list of career opportunities, and half the time students are able to discover those really on their own without us as lecturers having to tell them. There is plenty out there.
From your experience as a lecturer, would you say international studies and politics students have understanding of what they will do after completing this qualification?
I think the problem is that students, when they're in their first year, really don't know yet the kind of people they are and what they want to be when they leave their degree. But luckily by third year, I think we can rely on our students being independent thinking, independent minded, and knowing what they prefer the most. So students in third year are normally aware of their interests, and also as a department we have updated career opportunities on ULink and on our notice board, and that also helps to direct the focus of our third year group before they leave to enter the workplace.
What are some of the misconceptions people have about this qualification?
I think generally people do have misconceptions about our qualifications, and they really are misguided. People think politics is boring to start off with. They think politics is all about politicians and corruption, and they don't see what they can do with the degree after finishing studying. But once they get to know the subject, they'll see that criticizing politicians is actually fun, and it's our job. And secondly, it's only 1/10 of the abundant variety of subjects you actually study when you do these qualifications.
What advice can you give to someone who is interested in studying international studies and politics?
If I were to give advice to anyone who is interested in studying for this degree, I'd say, make sure you know you like the subject matter. And the only way you know you like the subject matter is to show up for classes. Get to know the lecturer, get to know the prescribed texts. You'll very quickly realize if it's not for you. Study hard, and then again, be an active student in your own studies. Only you can get the degree for yourself at the end of the day.
Is there a lot of opportunities and growth in the international industry for those students who have completed international studies and politics?
Internationally, and perhaps surprisingly to some of you, there are a lot of areas for students who would like to get a job overseas and not particularly stay in South Africa, especially with the BA PPE degree, that is the Politics, Philosophy and Economics degree. This combination of subjects is actually a niche area in the international marketplace because it covers all of those necessary areas that companies want people to have professional access to. Both of the degrees we have on offer Politics and international relations modules are offered in both of those degrees. We do this intentionally because if students have a background in politics and a background in international relations, it means that they can be employable in either field. It doesn't matter where they go.
Which companies offer employment to international studies and politics graduates?
As I said before, companies that offer employment to students in these fields really are those companies that expect students to be able to have the ability to think, to research, and to write and create argumentation. So research organizations and think tanks are number one. Number two would be government offices who actually do employ students with these degrees.
How much is a startup salary for someone who has completed this qualification?
The startup salary you can expect if you get this qualification is actually entirely dependent on the employer that you get. If you want to, for example, finish your undergraduate degree and move on with an honours degree, but also work part-time, then you can get a job as a tutor at our department, for example. That kind of salary would be much, much smaller. That's 35,000 to 75,000 Rand a year. But once you get your actual degree and move out into the marketplace, it depends on where you're going. If you're working for private organizations that require funding, then your salary might be lower. If you work for government, your salary might be higher. What I can suggest, though, is that the higher your qualification, the higher your remuneration. So where possible, enroll for postgraduate studies after your initial degree. Get a higher qualification, your master's, and perhaps even your doctorate. Why not? It is possible. The higher your qualification, the more you are able to market yourself and the more money you can get paid in return if that's what you're after.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Graham. I believe that your information will change student attitudes when it comes to this qualification and enroll to it. Thank you.